who believe that he got screwed over during draft day, or draft night rather, being a 144th pick, 5th round pick, to see him go out there and make some of those requisite throws and show flashes of the kind of potential that he has. I definitely think it was a good sign, make no mistake about it, and I definitely think that as a result, he's going to warrant more looks moving forward. But that's all we could say at this particular moment. We really can't say more than that right now.
Proof to me that he's absolutely demanding of more reps with the second and first teams.
Stephen A. Smith just did something he never does. He admitted he was dead wrong about a quarterback. After calling Shedeur Sanders' 5th round draft selection a damn disgrace and claiming it was Kaepernick-level collusion, the loudest voice in sports media just publicly confessed on First Take that the young Sanders deserved more looks and got screwed over on draft night. But what happened in that Panthers preseason game that made Stephen A. completely flip his script? And why is Dan Orlovsky now saying Cleveland should be starting this rookie over a Super Bowl champion? The truth behind this stunning reversal will shock you, and it exposes everything wrong with how the NFL evaluates talent. You guys know I don't mess around when it comes to calling out the media's BS. And what just went down on ESPN First Take is the perfect example of how narratives get twisted in the NFL. Stephen A. Smith, the man who never backs down from a take, just had to eat his words in front of millions of viewers. And honestly, it's about time someone admitted they were wrong about Shedeur Sanders. Let me break down exactly what happened here, because this isn't just about one preseason game. This is about a young quarterback who's been fighting an uphill battle since day one. And it's about the media finally waking up to what we've been seeing all along. So here's the backstory that nobody wants to talk about. Back in April, when the NFL draft was going down, Stephen A. Smith was on every platform imaginable claiming that Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round was some kind of conspiracy. He literally said it feels like Kaepernick-level collusion, and called it a targeted slight against Deion Sanders. The man was fired up, talking about how NFL teams were scared of the Sanders name and all this drama that comes with it. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where Stephen A. got it completely wrong initially. He was so focused on the politics and the drama surrounding the Sanders family that he wasn't actually looking at Shedeur's tape. He was getting caught up in all the noise instead of watching what this kid could actually do with a football in his hands. Fast forward to last Friday night against the Carolina Panthers. Shedeur Sanders steps onto that field for his first NFL preseason action, and what does he do? He goes out there and puts on an absolute clinic. 14 completions on 23 attempts, 138 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and 19 rushing yards. But those numbers don't even tell the whole story.
And then plays like this, I would actually be most encouraged by. One of the things for Shedeur coming out of the draft that I was critical of was I don't think he's a ridiculous athlete, not a high-end athlete, kind of average. Thought he made some plays with his legs that I was really impressed with. So I think that, and for me, the result doesn't matter, and the opponent for me, Stephen A., doesn't matter. Shefty, it's what does it look like? And he looked like a guy that should be getting opportunity to say, nope, you're actually not good enough. If I were the Browns, he would be getting reps with the starters this week. I felt like going into the game, if he played a certain way, that would be the case. He should getting reps with the starters this week, and he should.
And this is where Stephen A. had his come-to-Jesus moment. Listen to what he said right after watching that performance, and I'm quoting him directly here. He deserved more looks. He deserves the consideration that some of us thought he deserved. Coming into the draft, 5 of 7 passes for 10 or more air yards for 93 yards on both his touchdown passes. Did you catch that? Some of us thought he deserved. This is Stephen A. Smith basically admitting that he was looking at this whole situation backwards. He was so busy being outraged about the draft position that he forgot to actually analyze whether Shedeur had the goods to back up all that hype. But Dan Orlovsky? Man, Dan saw something different from day one. While Stephen A. was ranting about conspiracy theories, Dan was actually breaking down film and looking at fundamentals. And after watching Shedeur's performance, Dan doubled down with something that should have every Browns fan paying attention. If I were the Browns, he would be getting reps with the starters this week. Now, let's talk about what actually happened in that game that changed Stephen A.'s entire perspective. Because this wasn't just about the stats. This was about how Shedeur looked out there. Dan Orlovsky broke it down perfectly when he said Shedeur looked comfortable, in total control, played really fast, and didn't panic. But here's the kicker, and this is what really got to Stephen A. Shedeur himself said after the game, "I felt like I knew the answers to the test." That level of confidence, that poise under pressure, that's not something you can fake. That's not something that comes from being Coach Prime's son. That's pure football IQ and preparation. And you know what really sealed the deal for Stephen A? It was watching Shedeur make plays with his legs. Remember, one of the biggest knocks on Shedeur coming out of Colorado was that people thought he wasn't athletic enough, that he was just a pocket passer who couldn't create when things broke down. Well, that narrative got destroyed real quick when he started moving around in the pocket and picking up yards on the ground. Now, Stephen A. Being Stephen A., he couldn't just admit he was wrong without trying to save some face. He threw in that caveat about how it was just against the Panthers' second and third stringers, and how Carolina is one of the worst teams in football. But you know what? That's exactly the kind of thinking that got him into trouble in the first place. That here's what Stephen A. is still missing, and what Dan Orlovsky gets completely. It's not about the opponent. It's about how you look doing it. Shedeur could have gone out there and looked overwhelmed, could have been happy just to complete a few passes and hand the ball off. Instead, he went out there and played like he belonged, like he'd been doing this at the NFL level for years. But wait, it gets even more interesting. Just 3 days ago, according to recent reports, Stephen A. completely contradicted himself again by saying the Browns are setting Sanders up to fail by starting him too soon in the preseason. Can you believe that? First, he's mad that Shedeur got drafted too late. Then he admits Shedeur deserved more looks after one good game. Now he's saying they're throwing him to the Wolves too early? This is exactly the kind of flip-flopping that drives me crazy about sports media. They create these narratives and then bend over backwards trying to make reality fit their storylines instead of just calling it like it is. Here's the reality. That Stephen A. is finally starting to understand. Shedeur Sanders has been ready for this moment his entire life. This isn't some kid who got lucky because of his last name. This is a quarterback who's been preparing for the NFL since he was in high school, who's been coached by one of the greatest athletes of all time, who's played in some of the biggest college football games you can imagine, and Dan Orlovsky saw it from the beginning. While everyone else was getting caught up in the Sanders family drama, Dan was looking at the fundamentals. He was watching how Shedeur processed information, how he handled pressure, how he made decisions under fire. And what he saw was a quarterback who belonged in the NFL conversation from day one. But here's what really gets me fired up about this whole situation. Stephen A.'s admission isn't just about being wrong about one player. It's about how the entire NFL evaluation process is broken. How do you let a quarterback with Shedeur's skill set, his preparation, his football IQ, fall all the way to the 5th round? The answer is simple: bias. Not racial bias, not conspiracy theories, not Kaepernick-level collusion, just old-fashioned football bias. NFL teams got so caught up in measuring combined numbers and worried about off-field distractions that they forgot to evaluate the most important thing. Can this kid play football? And that's exactly what Shedeur proved on Friday night. He proved that all those concerns, all those question marks, all those reasons teams passed on him, none of that matters when you can step between the lines and perform. Stephen A. mentioned something else that's crucial to understanding why this performance was so impressive. He pointed out that Shedeur had an average of 3.48 seconds to throw, which is way more time than most NFL quarterbacks get. Some people might use that to diminish what Shedeur accomplished, but I see it differently. Having that much time to throw could actually make things harder for a rookie quarterback. When you have extra time, you start second-guessing yourself, you start seeing ghosts in the pocket, you start making the game more complicated than it needs to be. The fact that Shedeur used that time efficiently, that he stayed calm and made smart decisions, that tells me everything I need to know about his mental makeup. Dan Orlovsky broke down one play in particular that showed exactly why Shedeur is different. It wasn't a touchdown pass or a spectacular scramble. It was just a routine play where Shedeur showed mobility in the pocket, bought himself time, and made a smart throw. That's the kind of subtle stuff that separates NFL quarterbacks from college quarterbacks. And that's when it all clicked for Stephen A. He realized he'd been looking at this whole situation through the wrong lens. Instead of focusing on the politics and the drama, He should have been focusing on the player. Instead of getting caught up in draft position and family narratives, he should have been evaluating talent. Now, Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski is playing it coy, saying he's not sure about the quarterback rotation for the next preseason game. But you know what? That's exactly what you'd expect him to say. Behind the scenes, they're having conversations they never thought they'd be having about a fifth-round pick. Because here's the thing about proving people wrong in the NFL. Once you do it once, you've got to keep doing it. Shedeur showed flashes in one game, but now he's got to show consistency. He's got to prove it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't just good matchup, that he can perform under different circumstances and different pressures. But if I'm being honest with you guys, I think he's going to do exactly that. This isn't a kid who's going to be satisfied with one good performance. This is a quarterback who's been doubted his entire career, who's had to prove himself at every level, who's been preparing for this moment since he was old enough to throw a football, and Stephen A. Smith finally sees it too. That's why his admission is so significant. It's not just about one analyst changing his mind about one player. It's about recognizing that sometimes the traditional evaluation methods miss the mark, that sometimes the best players come from unexpected places, and that sometimes you've got to admit when you were wrong. The question now isn't whether Shedeur Sanders deserved more looks. Stephen A. already answered that one. The question is what happens next. Does Cleveland give him more opportunities with the first team? Does he continue to build on this performance? And most importantly, how many other teams are kicking themselves for passing on this kid? Because let me tell you something. If Shedeur Sanders keeps playing like this, keeps showing the poise and the skill he displayed against Carolina, there are going to be 31 other NFL teams wondering how they let Cleveland steal this kid in the fifth round. Stephen A. Smith learned that lesson the hard way. He went from conspiracy theories to genuine respect in the span of one preseason game. And honestly, that's exactly what should happen when a player steps up and proves all the doubters wrong. The beauty of football is that the tape doesn't lie. You can argue about draft position, you can debate family influence, you can question preparation and readiness, but when a quarterback steps between the lines and performs, all that other stuff becomes noise. Shedeur Sanders silenced the noise on Friday night, and he made one of the loudest voices in sports media admit he was wrong. That's not just impressive, that's legendary. So what do you think? Was Stephen A. right to admit he was wrong about Shedeur Sanders? Or do you think this is just more media hype around the Sanders name? And more importantly, do you believe Cleveland should be giving Shedeur more opportunities with the first team based on what we saw? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you want more real analysis that cuts through the media BS. Because this Shedeur Sanders story is just getting started, and something tells me Stephen A. Smith won't be the last person who has to eat their words about this kid.